85% vote, as I said in my talk. Since then, every single agreement that has been negotiated concerning Israel has called for the withdrawal of Israel from the occupied territories. One of the most notable cases was with the Oslo Agreement in 1993, and I think it was very clear benefit to Israel potentially that the 2002 unanimous vote by the Arab countries, all 23 Arab countries in the world, agreed unanimously to recognize Israel and Israel's right to live in peace within its international borders. And when then Crown Prince Abdullah, who was later king of Saudi Arabia, was questioned by the news media, what do you mean by recognizing Israel's right to live in peace? What relationship would you have with Israel? He said, we would treat Israel the same as we treat all other Arab nations. So that's the dream that we have had. I might add that the present roadmap for peace also encompasses the withdrawal by Israel from the occupied territories. I have modified those agreements by all the international community and by Israeli leaders, including the Knesset, by working on what I described in my talk as the Geneva Accords. That was a good faith negotiation following President Clinton's good moves, unfortunately in the last few days of his administration. And the agreement was reached between Israelis and Palestinians to modify the Green Line, to permit the settlements near the Green Line, near the border, to stay there, which would encompass more than half of all the Israeli settlers on Palestinian territory. I personally believe, to conclude my answer to your part of the question, that this would be the greatest step that Israel could make toward its own security if it would do so. I think Israel would be much more secure if it was willing to withdraw from the Palestinian territory. I don't think it would weaken Israel's security. It arouses intense anger and despair. And to get to the other question, the fence was proposed. It's not a fence, it's a wall. If you go there, just for instance, if you try to drive from Israel to Ramallah or Israel to Jericho, a few miles outside from Jerusalem, a few miles outside Jerusalem in Palestinian territory, you'll run into a wall that's 40 feet high. This is high as a 4-story building, solid concrete. And in the heavily occupied areas, including surrounding Bethlehem, a concrete wall exists. In non-populated areas, out in the countryside, there's a swath about 100 yards wide cleared, and there's a high wire fence in the middle. It's not a concrete wall to save money. But when Yitzhak Rabin was prime minister, and Shimon Peres was a deputy, they proposed that a wall be built on the Green Line, along Israel's border, the same way the fence was built in Germany to separate East and West Germany, on the line. And the International Court said that's okay. Then when Rabin was assassinated and Netanyahu and others took over the government, they said, we don't want the wall to be built on the line. We want to move it inside the West Bank. And on occasion, it penetrates deeply within the West Bank to encompass not only the existing Israeli settlements, but also to encompass beautiful land and hilltops for the construction of future settlements. So this is the difference. I would have no objection, and neither would the international community, if this barrier would be built along the border. I might point out, too, that about the same time you mentioned the reduction in deaths, Hamas declared unilaterally what they call a hudna in August of 2004. And they pledged that they would not permit, among their own membership, any more suicide bombings. And there has not been a suicide bombing attempted by Hamas since then. I'm not bragging on Hamas, But the point I'm saying is that there are more factors involved than just building an intrusive wall deep within Palestinian territory. And if you take the route of the wall now planned by Sharon and now Omer, as it winds through deep inside the West Bank, it connects on both ends, on the north of the Jordan Valley and on the southern Jordan Valley, with territory along the Jordan River that's also controlled by Israel. So this wall will completely surround the remaining Palestinian territory that will still be saturated at this moment with 205 different settlements. And each one of those 2 settlements are connected with a highway, a beautiful highway, sometimes 4 lanes, sometimes just 2 lanes. And those highways connect to Jerusalem. And Palestinians are prohibited from going on those highways in their own territory. And the reason for the lawsuit that I just described to you that was filed within the last week or so by 8 different human rights organizations and others is because there was a new rule promulgated by the Israeli military in the West Bank that would make it a crime with a sentence of 5 years in prison for any Palestinian who was caught riding in the same automobile with Israelis that had an Israeli tag on the car. And I hope that the High Court or the Supreme Court of Israel will not let this additional persecution of the Palestinians be permitted. I don't have any doubt in my own mind. I know many people here might disagree. I don't have any doubt in my own mind that the best way that Israel can find both peace and security is to withdraw to their own territory, and that the Palestinians have a viable and a contiguous state of their own, living side by side in peace.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. The next question is something I think about which there's been much heartfelt thinking here at Brandeis over the last few weeks, since it was mooted that you would come to visit us. And it is how best can we have a constructive debate about these issues, which are so dear to the hearts of so many here at Brandeis. And I'd call upon Dustin Smith, a junior in computer science, to ask us his question.
Former President Carter.
Yes.
As often as for those that are critical of Israel, they're frequently slammed as being anti-Semites, especially on a campus that endures such strong and widespread support of Israel. You yourself have already received such labels as you've touched on already. In these cases, how does one deal with this and still go on to make constructive dialogue?
I think that you're inviting me here after some confusion at the beginning of the process is a great indication that Brandeis has made notable progress in opening up the political and social environment to open debate. And my guess is that after this appearance, I'm not bragging on myself, there'll be a much more free discussion of some of the issues. And I don't think that the quotes that I gave earlier, I was a little bit hesitant to do it, but of the allegations against me, I mean, they haven't hurt me. You know, I can take it, and I'm not running for public office, and I have Secret Service protection the rest of my life, so I'm kind of impervious to attacks. But I think this campus has demonstrated by this enormous turnout and the reception that you gave me is a great indication that in the future if not in the past, you'll be given a perfect right to express your own views. And I wish you would, I don't know if it's possible, but I wish you would take to heart, everybody here, including some professors, my suggestion that you form a delegation of say, 10 people that might be elected or something, I don't know, with maybe 3 professors and 7 students, and go to the West Bank and just spend 3 days. I could give you a list of people that you might want to talk to, but you could use your own judgment. And just, you decide whether what I've said is accurate or whether the situation is vital. And I would guess that you would be amazed at the impact that your report would have when you come back. I'm not anticipating what it would be. It would have a great impact on this nation. It would have a great impact on members of Congress. It would have a great impact in Israel for that group of unrestricted lovers of Israel to say, let's take another look and see if we can't find peace based on justice and fairness and equity and righteousness. I believe that can happen, so I think you've got a good question. But let the debate take place. And I've never responded to any of the people that have made their attacks on me. I understand there's a Harvard professor that has done so. You know, I turned down a meeting with him. I didn't think that Brandeis needed a Harvard professor to come in here and tell you how to ask questions. But to summarize my answer, I think it's going to be much easier in the future, not only in this campus, but around the nation, to debate these issues. Thank you for your question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let's hope. Let's hope. Our next question, and I'm so glad I did warn you there weren't any soft matzo balls when this one comes up. The next question raises the issue of bias towards Israel in the media, which you suggest there is, but suggests also that you should perhaps look at the relationship of the centre with Saudi Arabia. And Asher Tannenbaum, a junior with a major in Islamic and Middle Eastern Studies, is going to give us this question.
Hello, President Carter.
Good afternoon.
Your book raises the issue of bias that influence our leaders and our policies, and that, quote, voices from Jerusalem dominate our media, unquote.
Yes.
Yet the Carter Center has received millions of dollars from Saudi sources, and its website indicates that you and Mrs. Carter speak with heads of state about human rights abuses. Human Rights Watch notes that Saudi Arabia has violated human rights in many ways, including by prosecuting, imprisoning, flogging, and torturing people for homosexual conduct. Have you spoken out publicly or directly to authorities concerning these abuses? And if so, what have you said?
Okay. The answer is absolutely yes. The Carter Center has had for the last 20 years in its bosom a collection of human rights organizations, 22 at this moment, including Amnesty International, Lawyers Committee for Human Rights, Mideast Watch, Africa Watch, and so forth. And we analyze each year the preeminent human rights violations in the world and where people are not permitted to speak out. And for the last 4 years, my chairman or chairperson at those annual conferences have been the United Nations High Commissioner on Human Rights. And we bring into the Carter Center representatives from about 40 nations who come and give us a report on abuses within their own countries and restraints of their own rights because they are speaking out publicly. The Saudi Arabian abuses, particularly under the Islamic banner that prohibit certain things and punish those who get married without their parents' permission and who don't permit any sort of Christian or other presence in Saudi Arabia, are abominable. And I would like to say that I was prepared for this question about finances because it's very important.